When I start a new game, I like to browse through the manual, get a sense for how things work and what I'm in for. Being as this is a game dangerously close to having released in the 80s, and my first ever mainline Might and Magic game, it was doubly true this time. And the manual here was really cool. Enough so that I'm choosing to start out my video talking about it. I'm going somewhere with this, I promise. It's not a wild tangent.
It's a bit of a tangent.
Okay, well, it's not just a wild tangent. The way it's structured is that the entire manual is the journal of a sorcerer named Korak the Mysterious. This Korak has allied himself with a group of adventurers under the guise of traversing the Isles of Terra in search of the world's creation myth, which has been scattered amongst the various cities dotting the isles. It's hinted at in the journal that Korak is much more than a simple sorcerer. I'll get in depth with that in the story section, but for now it's enough to say that he is a very powerful being exploring the lands and painting a great picture of the world while doing it. Though the manual reads as a narrative, they include details that allude to how the game itself works. They talk about the powers that were given to each of the races, which essentially describe each class. They talk about the 5 great cities spread across the Isles, and in doing so describe how the game's economy and leveling systems work. There's even a segment where one of Korak's companions dies, and they tell the story of having them resurrected at the temple. Having manuals structured in this way is not unheard of. Ultima was guilty of it as well, but I feel the need to shout out Might and Magic for doing such a great job of it. The whole thing really does feel like you're reading a short story, and you only realize once you're in the game that a lot of the plot points were alluding to real in-game mechanics. It's also a good way to introduce new players like myself to a story that is, to say the least, not what you'd expect from a fantasy-styled game. Unfortunately, a big downside here for someone like me, traveling backwards in time to discover a game nearly as old as I am, with mechanics I'm totally unfamiliar with, the storyteller approach just doesn't give me the full breadth of knowledge I need to confidently jump into this beast of a game. A lot of these older titles aren't shy about wrecking players who build their party wrong, or levying heavy consequences for doing something stupid early on.
He does stupid stuff a lot.
Add in having only a single save slot for your game, and a story that can take dozens of hours to complete, and I found the prospect of going in blind intimidating, to say the least. But I'm nothing if not stubbornly determined, and damn glad for it. After a few rough early hours, it became very obvious why this title is so beloved even to this day, and why the series continued to pump out sequels for the next decade. The game is addictive, and one that left me genuinely disappointed in its closing hours, hungry for the quest to continue. So I hope you'll join me in discovering, or rediscovering, the early days of one of dungeon crawling's most beloved franchises. The Isles await. So, I already touched on this briefly in my intro, but this game has a lot going on, and much like Ultima 7 I reviewed previously, very little is actually explained, at least not at more than a very surface level. Even a good thorough reading of the manual is likely to leave new players with more questions than answers. Some people love this sort of emergent gameplay and are happy to figure things out as they go. For everyone else who craves full understanding of a new game, don't worry. We have 3 decades of guides, tips, tricks, and fan sites to draw on. And of course, a super cool YouTube video made by a Walrus. I found with this title more than any other, I would have a constant second window open to give me info on what new skills do, which types of armor are better, and why there is a TV robot in my fantasy game. I never got a proper answer for that last point. At the outset of the game, we don't get much to work with. Even your party comes pre-assembled. You don't have to keep them though. Going to the nearby inn, you can create any characters you wish. I did keep a few of the defaults just because I liked their sprite work, but otherwise there's no real consequence to removing them all if you want. On that same note, it is really cool that every character portrait is unique. Status effects cause unique animations for each one as well. Your individual party members don't talk or really interact with anything directly. Their personality ends at making a lot of funny faces. Bunch of Gordon Freeman style mute protagonists here. Classes include the fantasy staple archetypes of warrior, rogue, or caster. In these spheres were hard focused roles like knights, robbers, or sorcerers, or those who share roles, such as a paladin, ranger, or archer, who have decent but less focused caster and melee traits. In total, you can have up to 6 party members, and I recommend having at a bare minimum one of each type of caster and a dedicated rogue type character. For the rogue, the reason is obvious. They are the best for lockpicking. In terms of casters, the 3 main overarching types are sorcerer, cleric, and druid. While there are a few spells shared between each, for the most part, each has at least a few unique spells that are pretty well required to progress the game. Well, I guess not required, but not having them makes everything worse. You can take a subclass caster, like a ranger instead of a druid, but be aware that while they do get access to all the same spells as a dedicated caster, they will have less magical ability and spells will cost more. Late game this matters less, but early on it can make things more difficult. For my party, we have a good human paladin, an evil orc knight, a neutral dwarf robber, a good gnome cleric, a neutral human druid, and finally, a good elf sorceress. Elves in this universe are blue. Just go with it. Also, look at how they portray dwarves in Might and Magic. This is straight up offensive.
Bombastic side eye.
The alignment of your party does matter as well. You find artifacts throughout the game that grant experience, but they're tied to alignment. So, if you don't have any evil members and find an evil artifact, it's just a wasted item. It's probably good to have a party member or 2 in each alignment. The alignments have no effect on the rest of the game, so far as I ever found. Now you can actually create more than 6 party members and swap them around throughout, but I'm going to heavily recommend against this. Characters in your current party are the only ones who gain experience, and this is a game that gets pretty tough later on. Experience increases and stat upgrades are going to have a hard cap in some cases. You don't really want to be wasting permanent upgrades on party members that aren't going to be with you. The best thing to do is have a good balanced party at the start of the game and keep them right until the end. You can also recruit 2 additional pre-built companions, and each city will have a few more to pick from. They have a daily gold cost, however, and early on they can do a lot to chew through your already limited gold supplies. I can see them being useful in some situations, but they aren't really ever necessary. In terms of progressing your characters, it's equal parts standard RPG progression mixed with a bit of weirdness. You do gain experience as you would expect, and you use the experience to level up at designated trainers. But these level ups don't actually affect your primary attributes. Level ups definitely boost your health and mana pools, but outside of that don't seem to affect your stats. There are a variety of ways to level up your individual stats. You can occasionally find trainers who offer a boost, generally for a cost of gold, but those are very limited and have hard training caps. I feel like I found maybe 2 or 3 of these trainers through the whole game. There are also points in the game where large boosts happen as part of the main quest. Again, not super common and very limited. The main way you'll level stats are just quite literally clicking on things. Your paladin opened a barrel in a dungeon? Congrats. He just received +5 intellect for some reason. Decide your sorcerer should dip her hand in a well? Good news, she now has +10 to aim. Your druid just touched an old rotten skeleton? Rejoice, they've just become 5 points more charismatic.
Editor's tips for a better life. Touching old skeletons doesn't make you more charismatic.
It's not a terrible system, and ensures you don't get too overpowered as all the upgrades are limited, but it unfortunately lends itself very heavily to save scumming every single time you open a container. There is sadly no indication of what items will give a boost, what they boost, or if they're just a normal item container. And as they're limited, you don't really want to just be giving them out randomly, or your characters are going to get stats they don't even need. Oh, and sometimes items you touch will just instantly kill you. So far as I could tell, there was no way at knowing what touching an item would do besides just touching it. There is one part where you can keep resetting a bunch of these stat boosting interactables, but it's only in this one particular cave, and you get the same stat boosts every time. There is a gem cost for each reset, but it essentially means you can max out certain stats if you're just willing to pay enough gems. My casters had wildly high stats compared to everyone else due to this. Overall, it's not as bad as it sounds, and the game actually manages to feel pretty balanced throughout, but it's for sure a weird way of doing things. The magic system on offer here is fairly in-depth. Damage spells are pretty straightforward. There are a ton, but they pretty well all boil down to doing a certain elemental damage, either to one enemy or multiple enemies depending on the spell. Early game, all 3 caster types can be useful, but late game, the sorcerer completely outclasses the other 2 in terms of damage potential.
I'm the best!
This is mostly due to receiving the implosion spell. It's a single-use spell that will strike any one target for a massive amount of damage, and it's a damage type that few enemies resist. The more exciting part of magic comes from utility spells. Clerics specialize on healing and buffing. My super pro tip that I learned way too late is to make heavy use of the heroism spell. It makes practically everything hit 100% of the time. You also get the invaluable Wizard Eye spell from your sorceress. This gives you a mini-map, absolutely necessary if you don't want to constantly be popping up the full screen map. And as an added bonus, you can see secret rooms with it. I also failed to start using this until very late game. Druids and Rangers are necessary for the Water Walk spell, which in a game centralizing around exploring different islands is a huge quality of life feature. Also, you get to pretend to be the son of God. Light is a hugely useful spell as well. Unlike some other games where light just makes it easier to see, here it's completely necessary. Without a light spell active, the great majority of dungeons are quite literally pitch black. I think there are torches you can buy as well, but don't bother. This is literally a first level spell. Just cast light. On the more mundane side, we have learnable skills. There are a total of 18 of these, and they are all passive. Each will have a unique effect, and once learned, they're permanent to that character. Some are beneficial for every character to learn, where others need only be learned by a single character. Some examples include bodybuilding, which adds 1 hit point per level on each character that knows it. That's quite useful for everyone to know. Another super useful skill is Mountaineer, which allows you to traverse mountains on the world map. Unlike bodybuilding, however, only 2 party members need to learn this skill to allow the entire party to move through the mountains. I guess we can just assume they put the rest of the party in their backpacks while traversing the slopes. My favorite of these skills has to be Spot Secret Doors. Only 1 person needs this skill for it to work, and when you have it, it makes this little gargoyle on your UI just go absolutely buck wild when you're standing by a secret wall. It's absolutely adorable and super useful. Also, on a semi-related note, this game has my favorite method of opening secret walls. You don't open them like a rational human being. You quite literally just boot the shit out of the wall to get through. The same applies to gates and doors. It even hurts you to do it. We're out here on the Isles just acting like the goddamn juggernaut. The items you collect in the game are equal parts straightforward and confusing as all get out. There are a huge number of items. Different weapons and armors, rings, capes, jewelry, you name it. It can seem overwhelming at first, but to be quite honest, all you really need to look at is whether you can equip the item and what material it's made out of. Each material essentially being a different tier of equipment. And if something is on a higher tier, you can pretty well guarantee it's better than a lower tier item, even if the higher tier is something generally weaker. A high tier short sword will likely outclass a low tier great axe. The real challenge here comes from knowing what is better. Is pearl better than ruby? Steel better than gold? And the most important question of all, how does one make a leather crossbow? Is it just made of flesh? You can identify stuff if you want, but I just kept a handy chart. You do occasionally find items with magical effects, and sometimes they're worthwhile, but for the most part it's fine to just focus on the material type. If you find something made of a good material with a magic effect, that's just gravy. You don't really want to be stockpiling a whole boatload of equipment anyway. Your inventory space is quite limited, with about half of it being equipped items. And late game, you'll start finding a lot of keys that you'll need to haul around as well. There is a bank in the game, but it only stores your gold and gems. Gold serves as your main currency, while gems are a magic currency and required for some spells. Don't worry about running out of gems though. I used magic with reckless abandon and still finished the game with something like 20,000 gems to spare. If you do put either in the bank, they accrue interest over time, and you know the money is safeguarded by this excessively muscular man. The actual combat in the game is pretty bare bones. Everything is turn-based. The world continues to move even while in combat, though even it moves in a turn-based fashion. What this means is, if you start fighting one enemy, and there are 3 more enemies 2 tiles away, after 2 rounds of combat, you're going to be fighting 4 enemies when they close in. Sort of a neat system where the whole world doesn't just pause for your combat, but it also doesn't feel unfair where everything is immediately on top of you while you're locked into an encounter. You can also launch spells or fire arrows from outside combat, but each time you do counts as a round of combat, so your enemies will eventually reach you, and some enemies will even fire back while they approach. In combat, you can pretty well attack or cast spells. You can also run away, but this is generally going to lead to half the party dying from my experience. Just die in combat like a real hero. This has been a lot of talk on gameplay mechanics, but something I haven't touched on is the actual gameplay loop of Might and Magic.
Brother, may I have the loops?
The game is very directionless at the start, arguably throughout the entire experience. You just spawn in the first city with very little indication of what to do. Each area you enter will have a journal entry from Korak that you can read, and those will give you some idea of what can be done in that area, but these can often be vague themselves. Realistically, what this game is about is wandering around, killing things, and clearing dungeons. Over time, you'll find keys, gain power, gain skills, and be able to progress into the harder and harder dungeons. Repeat until the credits roll. It sounds basic, but it's actually quite enjoyable, and one of the more relaxing games I've played in recent memory. Having very little direction, it's super likely you'll wander into an area far too advanced for you, where you can decide to run away, or try to progress and maybe jump forward a few levels. It has a really nice risk-reward feeling to everything you do, and provides a lot of incentive and gratification for exploring late-game areas without resorting to just scaling enemies like a lot of newer games do. And while the world map is big, it's not too daunting so long as you have the included map that came with the game. It's fun to check off all the dungeons you've cleared as you go. If you're a sad individual living off a digital copy like me, there are digital versions of the map online. It's not as nice, but it's still useful. Unethical life advice. If you work in an office, you can print the map off using office resources if you show up before anyone else. They'll never find out. Not that I did that. That would be wrong. So I'm going to make the potentially unpopular decision to not really touch on the lore of the first 2 Might and Magic games. I did look them up, and as much as I feel I have a grasp on it, I actually personally feel this game's narrative is a touch more interesting when taken on its own. For me, the unexpected revelation on what the Isles of Terra actually are was cool to experience as an isolated event. If you know the story of the other games, it comes pre-revealed. If you're curious as to why I chose to start my mainline Might and Magic playthrough with the third installment and not the first, I think it just comes down to accessibility and gameplay. The first two games certainly look interesting, and as much as I would likely enjoy myself immensely playing through them, they are visually lacking in a lot of ways. I was really drawn to the look and feel of Isles of Terra more than the original installments. Also, the dude on the cover art for Isles of Terra is awesome, and I really wanted to put him in a thumbnail. That said though, if this video series does well, maybe we'll go back and take a look at where the series truly started. Anyhow, we start in the city of Fountainhead. After going to the inn and shuffling around my party a bit, there's a few leads we can follow. Apparently the city itself is in the midst of a moose rat epidemic. You heard me right. This game has moose rats. Absolutely best enemy design I think I've ever encountered to date. It's good to do a bit of exploring before facing the moose rat menace. They are pretty tough for a bunch of first level adventurers. Outside the city there's a ton to do even on this first island. Moving south we can make our way to Baywatch, being sure to destroy any monster outposts you find along the way. Outposts both serve as monster spawners and massive sources of early game gold and experience. You just need to walk over them to destroy them, so it's always worthwhile to wreck these things when you see them. Anyhow, we find the city of Baywatch off the coast, and find it's having problems of its own, being completely overrun by the undead. Clearing through it, at the back we find trainers for two necessary skills: mountaineering and pathfinding. Each skill needs to be taught to 2 people, and that ensures everyone gets the benefit. Once we have these skills, you can traverse thick woods and tall mountains like they weren't even there. Now that we're equipped to move, it's good to spend some time wandering the first island, picking up items, gold, and experience. This game is pretty loosey-goose in terms of direction, but I pretty well pillaged the entire first island at this point. I skipped the dungeons for now, as I didn't quite feel ready. But what we are ready for is some moose rat action. Their lair under Fountainhead is a great first dungeon. Not too long, it has a bit of everything to teach you how to navigate it. We learn to use the light to illuminate everything. Learn that traps hurt. Here's a hint: use jump or teleport to bypass them without taking damage. We also find discovering secret walls is key to finishing the game. Don't worry, they're well landmarked. I do have to say, just as an aside, the dungeons in this game are pretty enjoyable. They don't have the horrendous maziness of some other games, and while there are puzzles, none of them are too tough. Also, the exact solutions for every puzzle in the game actually exist directly in the game. More on that later. At the end of the dungeon, we cross swords with the Rat Overlord, truly a worthy foe. His defeat allows us to free Morphos, Fountainhead's imprisoned protector. Maximum feel-good points. Feeling a bit stronger now, let's explore the southern side of the island. It's inhabited with, well, these defy explanation.
What is that?
Absolute nightmare fuel. Very aptly, these things cause insanity on your party members. It's a sort of obnoxious status effect that can't be cured by your healers. You either need to go to the temple to cure it, or use the nearby wagon to get them to cure you. It's worth clearing out most of the area before going to cure yourself. They're just going to keep reinfecting you with it. Once we make it through, we reach the third city, Wildabar. It is very surprisingly infested with hostile ninjas. And I'm quoting the official name here, Mad Dwarves. This isn't even the tip of the iceberg with how weird enemies are going to get in this game. We finish off the ninja threat, get some new spells and levels, and make our way into the first dungeon, the Temple of Mu. I don't know who Mu is, but it's actually the name of my little scene manager cat.
I prefer to work in the shadows.
Thanks, Mu. You keep this production together. Anyway, the whole point of this dungeon is to get the Crusader skill. Just reaching the end of the dungeon bestows it on your whole party. And with that done, you can now enter the various castles spread out across the Isles. There are 3 total. Castle Whiteshield houses the forces of good, Castle Bloodrain is the seat of neutrality, and Castle Dragontooth is where evil lives. You will eventually have to choose to ally yourself with one of these 3 groups. For now though, you can just pillage their treasure if you want. The only consequence is that the guards will attack you, but it doesn't affect the story at all. Just make sure you can handle the guards. After this we have 2 more cities to explore and clear. First is Swamp Town. There's a ferry near Baywatch that takes us there. Easy enough to clear. Much like Baywatch, it's infested with the undead. Clearing the surrounding area is a bit more of a hassle. The area is filled with surprisingly tough bugs and brigands. There are environmental hazards like quicksand that will instantly kill party members, and even the world's ugliest trolls. Once we finish this area, we make our way to the last and most difficult city, Blistering Heights. This area is filled with fire-based creatures. That alone isn't so bad. The real challenge comes from when you want to explore the surrounding areas. Every move, turn, or attack you make in this area will cause you to take fire damage. It's an absolute slog. And from what I can tell, there is no trick here. You just have to tank the damage. The good news is this area is mostly optional. You definitely should explore it for experience and loot, but if you aren't feeling it, you can leave this area till the very end of the game. At this point, we're almost ready to start drilling towards that end, but a good place to go first is Slither Cult Stronghold, ironically back on that first island in the game. Clearing through this dungeon and its strange boob snake inhabitants, you can find Slither Cult Saloon. It's not a saloon, but what it is a room with 3 devices in it. Each one will boost either aim, might, or endurance at the cost of a Quatlu coin. Apparently the coins are a Star Trek reference of some sort, but I'll be honest, I'm not much of a Trekkie, so the reference is lost on me. I'm more of a Stargate guy. We found a good number of these coins at this point, so it's a great place to boost up your stats. Oh, and you can randomly get eradicated while raising stats, so save before doing this. Now that we've explored and liberated all 5 cities, and gotten a few stat upgrades, there's a few things we need to do to bring us into that endgame. Firstly, we need to gather a minimum of 11 King's Orbs of Ultimate Power. Don't let that number sound daunting though. They're going to appear in great abundance in the upcoming dungeons. You're going to have far more than you need, which is good, because each you turn in is worth a whopping 1,000,000 experience. Aside from this, our real goal is to find 6 access cards. Access to what, you might wonder? Well, dotted through all the island zones are pyramids. I've been kind of hiding the lead here, but if you happen to step into these pyramids and have never played a Might and Magic game, you might be surprised. They aren't pyramids inside at all. They're a giant interconnected underground spaceship. So this isn't actually explained until the very end of the game, but I'm going to include it here for the sake of telling a coherent story. Terra is one of many worlds that was created as an experiment by an advanced alien species. This spaceship is connected to that. Korak, that guy from the instruction manual, is no simple sorcerer, but a being known as a guardian. He is not actually seeking the origin of the Isles. He's seeking another rogue guardian that is turned to evil known as Sheltem. Now, like I said, I never played the first games, but essentially this chase has been going on since the first game. Korak just behind Sheltem each step of the way. We need 6 access cards to find Korak, and on top of that we need to be named Ultimate Adventurer by completing the Maze from Hell and a champion of good, evil, or neutrality. There's also an activation code you need, but that can be found within the pyramid itself, as can the answer to literally every puzzle in the game. Anyhow, getting all of this is a lot of dungeon crawling. It's super fun, but we're gonna breeze past a lot of it. Some great highlights include an ice dragon cave, getting eradicated in the Cathedral of Carnage, finding and drinking from the Fountain of Youth, fighting discount beholders in the Halls of Insanity, defeating the King of the Vampires, and of course, the aforementioned Maze from Hell. The maze is tough, but not for the reason you might think. The actual maziness of it is pretty weak. Compared to other dungeon crawlers like Eye of the Beholder, this maze is a walk in the park. It's a maze from heck at best. The challenge of it comes from the enemies. the Minotaur. They are super hard to hit, do insane damage, and come in numbers. Use all your buffs here. You're going to need it. The good news is, I think their numbers are limited. Also, there are 3 or 4 King's Orbs in here, so by the time you're done, you'll probably have a solid 10 plus levels on every party member. In the center of the maze is a fountain. Drinking from it bestows the title of Ultimate Adventurer. Somewhere in the midst of all these dungeons, you'll also acquire enough orbs to turn into the castle of your choice. I decided to give mine to King Righteous and take the side of good. This act both gives you the title of Champion of Good and makes all your characters switch alignment to good. All these many things complete and gathered, it's time to finish this quest. We head to the central pyramid in the Blistering Heights. Once inside, there are tons of these blue head terminals. If you type the word creators, each will give part of the lore. They talk of Sheltam and Korak's origins, and of the 2 great races that are responsible for creating everything, the Ancients and the Creators. Cool stuff. The enemies in here are absolutely the toughest you'll face. Called Terminators, if they even get a hit off, it's likely to eradicate whoever it lands on. The sorcerer spell Implosion is necessary here. Almost nothing else does anything to these death machines. Once we breach into the final chamber, we find Korak and Sheltam engaged in mortal combat, unfortunately described only in text and not actually shown. Your arrival distracts Korak, and Sheltam is able to escape to a nearby teleporter. Korak gives chase and beckons you to follow. You can, but if you want a silly little Easter egg, there is an optional room here that is absolutely filled to the brim with Terminators. At the end is a terminal that will show you the credits for the game and this secret message. Cool addition. Alright, no more delaying. Heading through the teleport tube after Korak, we find ourselves in a ship of sorts. A virtual assistant in the ship gives us a message from Korak. Sheltam has escaped in a different ship and Korak has given chase. He wants you, as ultimate adventurers and champions of good, to follow and render assistance in his chase. We've come this far, so we put the activation code into the console and launch off into the stars in search of Sheltam. Not at all how I expected my fantasy game to end, but hey, at least it's a unique story, and I unironically love the stilted animation of the spaceship flying away. Rad as hell. Better music, but just one endless ditty that goes round and round, driving you mad. I am specifically choosing to do my on and off review section on this video because of this comment I found. I cannot overstate how much I like the music in this game. On a lot of these older videos, the music can be one of the first things to give me the vibe, whether I'm going to have a good time or a bad time. The music here immediately put me into nostalgia mode. I was ready to build a party and explore the surrounding environs. I was ready to slash, cast, and smash my way through 50 hours of RPG bliss. The music could be repetitive at times, but it was anything but one endless ditty. There was different music in the cities, dungeons, temples, guilds, and shops. Even the overworld had its own song that just got you in the right mood to explore the islands. For what it's worth, I am acutely aware that I am in a minority when it comes to this old type of beat boopy DOS music, and like I've said before, I'm not really a music expert, but what I do know is that I like what I like, and if you're similarly partial to this style of music, you'll like what this game has to offer. I thought this would be cool to experience again. It wasn't. For $10, I'd recommend it for nostalgia reasons only. Anyone who's been on this channel a long time has probably heard this exact argument from me before, but it's not going to stop me from making it again. These retro games are so good, and it's not just nostalgia. Probably a solid 50% of the videos I have on this channel are brand new to me. but going in with an open mind and a bit of patience often rewards me with hours of enjoyment and adventuring that will stick with me for ages. If I had just dismissed these often suspect-looking titles and said, "Ah, I guess you had to be there to appreciate these clunkers," I would have been robbing myself of some of the best gaming experiences of my life. There is so much discourse these days centering on video game preservation. As technology improves and changes, titles from decades ago become less and less accessible. Development and publishing houses fade into nothing. Copyright becomes muddled, and games are delisted. And with physical media very quickly vanishing, we are at real risk of losing some things from mainstream accessibility forever. I think it's so important to retain this type of media as a part of video gaming history, and to just outright dismiss anyone who's trying to play these titles as simply nostalgic does nothing but intimidate new players into giving them a shot. I'm not blind to the fact that some titles are harder to get into than others, and it's fine to legitimately not enjoy some games. I just think dismissing a game because you weren't there is a mistake. If you do like dungeon crawlers or RPGs and have interest in exploring something a bit outside your normal comfort zone, this game is absolutely worth the $10 price tag and then some. Isles of Terra was a weird game for me. Despite it being my first ever mainline entry into the Might and Magic series, I feel like I have an instant nostalgia for it. It has that cozy feel of a game I grew up with, despite not having actually grown up with it. The only other game that gave me this sort of instant nostalgia feeling was probably Ultima. Interestingly enough, despite Ultima and Might and Magic being very different games, I think I can draw a lot of similarities between them. Both wear the facade of being a standard fantasy realm, but with an entire hidden world beneath. In Ultima, it's the revelation that the Avatar is a native Earthling who just happens to be visiting Britannia through the use of a red moon gate. Here in the Isles of Terra, we discover the fantasy world we inhabit is an experiment by a significantly more advanced alien civilization. It's that really interesting sort of non-standard storytelling that makes a series stand out from its competition. And yes, I am aware this type of fantasy sci-fi mashup was a touch more common in the 90s. It's still a super interesting setting to pull off correctly. More than anything though, I think Might and Magic thrives on its deep gameplay systems and mechanics, overlaid on a relatively simple game world. There is a ton to do and see in this extremely rudimentary version of an open world. And while difficulty may railroad the player a bit in the early game, it's really your choice where you want to go most of the time. There is definitely a more intended route through this game, but not necessarily a wrong route. And as much as there is that interesting narrative, it's really just a loose framework happening in the background. You won't be worried about what's actually going on until quite literally the last hour or two of the game. The focus of this game is the adventure. It's all about exploring the Isles, killing bad guys, and completing the quest. And I think we could all use a bit more of that single-minded adventure and sense of wonder in our lives these days. See you in the next video.